Willkommen bei ERA, der Gemeinschaft zur Förderung des modernen Realismus. Heute mit dem amerikanischen Maler John Hulsey. Wir sind eine Gruppe internationaler Künstler, die traditionelle Maltechniken anwendet, um realistische, gegenwartsnahe Gemälde zu kreieren. Der Maler John Hulsey wird in diesem Film von Graeme Stevenson vorgestellt. John Hulsey ist ein amerikanischer Maler, der sich seit fast 50 Jahren mit der Aquarell- und Ölmalerei beschäftigt. Seine Arbeiten sind in Firmen- und Privatsammlungen zu finden. Er hat eine Vielzahl von Auszeichnungen erhalten und als international bekannter Workshopleiter viele Beiträge in wichtigen Publikationen veröffentlicht. John lebt in der Universitätsstadt Lawrence im Bundesstaat Kansas. Die nicht ganz 100.000 Einwohner Stadt liegt in der Nähe des Clinton-Stausees, der die oft wilden Wasser der Zuflüsse des Kansas Rivers zähmt. Im Film demonstriert John Hulsey wichtige Teile seines Könnens. Der Originaltext im folgenden Film ist mit deutschen Untertiteln versehen.
G'day viewers, my name's Graeme Stevenson and I'd like to invite you to come on a journey of creativity and learning and adventure through the series Colour in Your Life. There's an artist in every family throughout the world, and lots of times there's an artist deep down inside all of us as well. So grab your kids, your brothers, your sisters, your aunties, uncles and mums and dads and come and see how some of the best artists do what they do.
Well, hi folks. Well, we are in Lawrence in Kansas in the United States, and we are very privileged to be in the studio of one of America's great master landscape artists. It's truly an amazing place to be. Sir, John Hulsey, it's a pleasure to be here.
Nice to meet you.
Really
nice
is.
to have you in my studio.
Oh, thank you so much. This is an absolute honour. John and his darling wife Anne are both regarded as master artists. They are in periodicals all over the place, private collections, museums, and it's fantastic to really be here. You actually got a degree from the Kansas University.
Well, I didn't get a degree. I went through 6 years of art institutes and universities, different schools, and finally I felt like I'd learned what they were going to teach me and walked out without a degree. But then the real work started.
Yeah, and you've had a whole life's history.
Yeah.
I mean, you and Anne actually just basically painting and being in New York for some time as well.
That's right.
Setting up a studio in Brooklyn, on the
Garrison.
Hudson. On Garrison on the Hudson, yeah. Going from there, and then in 1990, sort of making the decision to come back to Kansas and then literally build. And honestly, guys, it's probably one of the most magnificent studios I've ever been in. Anne's on one side, you're on the other. The office is upstairs and you live downstairs on a magnificent property that these guys have put together, and it's just truly fantastic. But as I said before, John is one of America's great landscape artists. I mean, his use of colour, which we're going to go through today as well, his sunsets, the property that John and Anne actually have is literally a Disneyland of pictures itself. In any sense, isn't it? You can walk out the back and there's ponds and the sunsets are magnificent. But we're going to talk more about John's career as we go through the day, and we're going to learn a great deal today. It's going to be an amazing trip. So I'm going to get out of shot as I normally do, and I'm going to let the master take over.
You're too kind.
Thanks. All right, John, well, we are standing in front of your palette, which looks absolutely amazing. Tell us about the process you go through as far as mixing your colours.
Okay. Well, first off, you can see I squeeze out a lot of color. This is something I learned over time, but my students don't want to put out paint, but if you don't put out paint, it won't wind up on the canvas, will it? So I use a lot of color, and the other thing that I learned over time and kind of evolved into doing was, instead of mixing colors and painting and mixing and painting, I decided, well, it might be more efficient if I mix what's called a color string before I start painting. So by getting that all correct up front and out of the way, I can spend more of my time just painting, which is the fun part anyway. Plus, by doing a color string that is blended like this, I have an infinite number of choices between any two places on my palette, rather than mixing these individual steps that may or may not be right in the first place. So it's just efficient. The palette knife is wonderful for creating these terrifically interpretive textures without getting so fastidiously tight about the work. Once I started using knives, I realized it's just a natural tool for me. But there's a difference between knives. I use painting knives to paint with, and the two basic styles of the many styles that exist are the round back and the diamond back. And these two knives have different uses. The round back is good for smoothing paint and smoothly applying paint, where the diamond back allows you a point where you can scrape an edge. And so they each have their own particular uses as you get going. And then you can also find specific shapes like this little fine shape, which I love for small details. And I'm going to start essentially with this round back and grab some medium, very warm brown out of my palette. And I'll get some on the back of my knife, like this. But that won't make a controllable shape, so I'm going to have to tailor this a little bit by pulling some of the paint off so it's just on the edge there. So, see that? So now I can make a very controlled shape. And you can see what a nice edge I can make here just by dragging this up. I can begin to work this paint in there and keep my edge fairly clean, but without being overly tight with that. I just don't want to get tightened up. I want to keep this impressionistic feel. Yeah. So that gives you a measure of control. Then I'll switch to my smaller knife and say start working in the background with these a little bit cooler, a little bit greener tones. And I'll just, with this, I'm just going to pick up a blob of paint and start working it in here and creating shapes, right? And adding to the depth of the value is what I'm going for here. I'm using a darker color to now gradually build up my darks as I go along.
And John, just looking across at your armory of equipment, you're incredibly well organized.
All right, so I'm going to work with my knives in the background of this piece and begin building up some tones that need to be there. So again, I'm going to get into my round back painting knife, and I'm going to go for some of the warm oranges here right now. And so this is kind of an infinite blend. I'm going to start here and see how this looks on the panel. You can just see how easy this is. It's really kind of child's play at this stage. So you can see these knives make wonderful sort of, it looks uncontrollable, but it isn't. Wonderful kinds of shapes that would be very hard to make with a brush. Where these knives, and again I can scrape back through it to make specific shapes if you want, or lines, or if I didn't like this, I could go and scrape the whole thing off, wipe it down, because my study, or my initial step, not my study, but this part's already dry, so it doesn't matter. I can work over the top, and it took a little while to learn how to do that process so it would allow me to be lots freer with my applications of paint.
Well, some of the great examples that you've got, as far as using a knife is concerned, is Morning on the Pond 1. Right. Which is a heron just cruising across in the morning. You can actually see the green algae and the water lilies, and that's all built up using that palette knife. Yes,
yeah, and that's one of the perfect examples of where the knife just shines in that type of painting, because the algae and mosses are sitting on top of the water, right? We know that physically. And so I was able to paint everything underneath. All the water was painted first, and then I just mimicked what nature was doing and palette knifed all of that across the dry surface underneath, and was able to build up that beautiful technique surface. So then the painting is actually mimicking or doing the same thing that nature's doing. Worked really well.
Done it beautifully. And then on the Pond 2, which is obviously using the palette knife as well, in the same way.
Yeah, just building up colors. And what is not apparent from a distance in these paintings is the up-close conglomeration of paint. Textures and colors are really wonderful. So
Yeah, and it's brought out really well in the picture Return of the Orioles, the rainbow colours within this, and then there's this tactile, three-dimensional aspect that you get with your work because of the knives that you use. It's just amazing, it really is.
Yes. What I want to show you is the next step in working up a painting like this. Because the knives are so imprecise and tend to make marks sometimes that I don't want, I need kind of a roadmap of where I'm going to make my strokes, a loose roadmap. And so I use an oil pastel crayon for this. And this is so much better for me than, say, charcoal or graphite because it will dissolve in the paint thinner that I use anyway. So what I'm going to do is transfer these tree marks, or these tree shapes, down into the water, which is, as I said, now dry. So I want to make just a little tick mark here where that exits, and this one will exit here. And so there'll be a little tick mark here. So I would tend to essentially do the mirror effect. And I'm also looking at my watercolor here for how this works. Yeah, so there's perhaps one, and then these two join and diverge there, right? And you can see I don't have to be very precise about this. I can be as suggestive or loose as I want, because honestly, by the time the knife goes on, these will be slightly different anyway. We'll take that over there, and then another one comes up here, and so forth. And the same thing happens up here with this tree, where if you're bringing branches over the water, so you can do this kind of a thing, and you'll know exactly, get the shapes correct, and then you can have a lot of fun with the knives and work very quickly, because you've got your roadmap on here, and you don't have to constantly look back and forth to your reference.
One of the things that really stands out in your work, John, is your extraordinary skies and sunsets. They really are quite mind-boggling. And you've got a piece called Dawn Harvest 2, and then Enlightenment, which is another piece. And you know, do you just stand there some evenings with a camera and look at that?
Yes, I do. I photograph, but more importantly, I'll do a little oil or watercolor study. And so it takes a little preparation. I have to plan to be outside painting for a while. Okay, now that particular knife you've got there, I mean, has that got a name, a specific name? It probably does. I call it the little skinny knife.
The thin round one.
Yeah, the skinny knife. But I don't know what the manufacturer calls it. They usually just give them numbers in the catalogs and things.
Now, another one of your claim to fames, apart from being a recognised master artist through International Artists magazine, is that you also made the front cover of Time magazine with a picture that you did in the 80s of Maggie Thatcher.
That's correct.
That's great.
That was back in my illustration days. I was working in New York, and I was doing a lot of book covers and magazine illustrations, and that particular cover was originally executed for Fortune magazine. I'm not sure if they're even around these days, but they had killed the cover. They didn't use it, and the Falklands War was happening. So I think Anne essentially said I should send that into Time magazine as a print and see if they'll use it, and lo and behold, they did.
Yeah, no, it looks amazing, and you've actually got a couple of websites. The address for your personal website is
johnhulsey.com, one word, John Hulsey. And then the Artist's Road, which is our teaching website we set up in 2010, is theartistsroad.net. That's where we try and share all this information that we've learned over the years, videos, step-by-steps, tutorials, our travels. We just came back from teaching in Tuscany. Our international workshops are on there, our domestic workshops are on there. And so you can go there and browse through over 650 articles to find whatever you need. There's art historical. We spent decades picking up all this information and learning how to paint and use materials. Hopefully that'll shorten that learning curve for our members so they don't have to go through all this.
Yeah, it's a fantastic site, and as you said, there is just so much great information in there. I think that you and I are both on the same path to illuminate people across the world with great art education.
Yeah, because all we artists have, because we're solitary workers is each other. And the more we can relate to each other and share information with each other, the better the world's going to be.
Absolutely.
Now I'm going to draw some of the branches on here. And again, I'll pick up some paint. And then I want to get just an edge of paint on there. You know, I want to wipe the other part off. And so this might give me a nice line. Let's see. You can see it's a little unpredictable what you're going to get. And I like that. I like that aspect to it.
Some of the pieces that you do are very dominant towards the higher part of the horizon, and pictures like Summer Storm too. And you know, saying that, living in Kansas, I mean, you would get some very dynamic cumulus.
Yes.
Cumulonimbus clouds around here. You know, you get, this is a tornado area as well.
Yeah, you're right. We live in the sky here more than anything else because our horizon's fairly low and flat in many places. So a preoccupation with the sky kind of comes with the territory.
Yeah, even the piece Storm Clearing. I'm not sure if there's a tornado gone through after that, but it still looks fairly ominous.
Right before.
Right before, there you go.
Sometimes I'll go out before tornado or right after tornado, after looking at the maps, the radar and everything, because you don't want to walk right into one. But if you know the track of the storm, you can be a few miles off of it and be safe. The violent storms just tear the clouds up into shapes they don't normally make.
Yeah.
And those shapes become really interesting for paintings. So yes, it could be a little risky, but not if you're smart about it. So I'm mixing up some more of this color for the water, and I'm going to make this a little greener this time. In fact, I might even pull a little bit of this sap green in. I normally like to mix my greens from blues and yellows. Sometimes a little bit of a tube green can just give you a little extra boost that you need. Let me grab another knife here. Here's a nice big fat one. We'll try this fat one. See how this works.
There you go.
Sometimes I just try the knife just to see what it does, you know.
Oh, that looks good.
Yeah, that's putting on a lot. That's good.
And you've actually got some books out. You've got one in oils called Nocturnes, which would be difficult at the best of times, I would say. And then you've got another one on watercolours called A Field Guide to Plein Air Painting, which is a fantastic book as well. They're both packed full of information that I think a lot of people would definitely like to get their hands on.
So these books are basically like introductions to, if you're going to paint outside in watercolor, what tools do you need? What kind of paints might you use? What kind of pochade or easel might you use? And then how to go about figuring out how to work out in natural light if you've never done that before, which is a big step. So now I'm just taking a brush and kind of distributing and smearing around and making some shapes here in the water. I'm just doing it kind of here and there, and the other thing the brush can do, I know we've talked about this, is take paint off. So you can take a bristle brush and a little thinner and actually push a hole in your paint surface.
You can sort of see with the water how well you do the water as well with the piece.
Yeah.
Chiaroscuro. Have I pronounced that correctly?
Yeah, the chiaroscuro. Right, good Italian word.
And you can see the levels and the lines of the water, how they interact with the plane at a right angle all the way up through that piece. It's just wonderful.
Yeah. In the teaching that we do, I'm always trying to encourage my students to try these things and serve as a coach and a guide for getting out of your comfort zone and trying to work with effects that maybe you've never tried before. And that's one of the great benefits, I think, of being in a class where somebody can teach you and give you the opportunity to try things.
And part of the joy in coming here today was also meeting your lovely wife, Anne, and she is also an exceptionally brilliant artist. I mean, you've got a great relationship for 45 years with each other, painting and travelling, which I think is a wonderful way to lead your life. And you've got a picture that you've painted of her called Catching Snow, which is really just a beautiful piece. I think it indicates the love that you have for your dear girl. And then the Queen of Snows, the light coming through her hands and the light on her face. Incredibly well done.
Oh, thank you.
And a wonderful woman too.
Anne loves to catch snowflakes on her tongue.
Yeah?
And that's where that one painting came from.
That's great.
And it's so childlike too, and I just thought, oh, that's wonderful, I need to do a painting of that. So now I'm really getting much thicker layers of paint on here in the water, which is fun. And I might do a little correction here and here, like that. Pull that out, there. So you can kind of see how that, you can always come back and restyle things with these thick amounts of paint. You can lay right over the top of something like that.
Yeah.
And make it go away. So there's this process of thin washes, thick applications, scraping back, applying over the top. It's almost like plastering sometimes, but it's a huge amount of fun.
If people want to find out a lot of this information, they can go to your website, theartistsroad.net. You've got so much information in there. Silly not to go on and have a talk to you guys.
Yes, there's a lot of information. Well, there's 2018, there's 8 years of information on there, and we've been adding new content every single month.
And also your workshops as well. I mean, you go to some wonderful places, and it doesn't matter whether you're in America or not.
No.
You can always meet John and Anne in these wonderful locations they go to just by simply getting in touch with them. You can get on an aeroplane no matter where you are in the world and fly in and be with them for the week and learn some amazing things.
Yeah, and have some fun.
Yeah.
We always have a really good time in the workshops. We scout them in advance. We're familiar with the place. We've painted there before. So you're in good hands in that regard.
Well, John, we have actually had a fantastic day with you. Learned so much and seen your amazing work and the work that you do with knives, spatulas, palette knives. It's been incredibly interesting without a doubt, and because of the beauty of editing, as you can see the finished painting right now, and it looks just amazing, as all of your work does. But really like to thank you for having us in your studio. We've had a great day, and thanks heaps.
Well, I appreciate you all coming. This has been a thrill for me to paint for you and to be able to talk to your wonderful audience and explain what I'm doing. It's a real honor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tom. All right, guys, a fantastic day with the wonderful man in Lawrence in Kansas. It's like, are we still in Kansas?
Yeah, we're still here, man.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Good to know you.
Yeah. We had a great time. John's obviously an amazingly talented man, as is his darling wife, Anne. Now, if you want to go along to their workshops, and these are just great places to be. You have a lot of fun, don't you? Drink a lot of wine, eat a lot of food.
Yeah.
Go into the website.
www.johnhulsey.com.
And
theartistsroad.net.
And if you want to see some of Anne's work as well,
it's annetrusty.com.
Yeah, come in and have a look, guys, because they're an amazingly talented couple. You'd have a fantastic time with them down there. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, you can pop on a plane and head down to either Rome or Paris or wherever you guys are and catch up and go from there.
We'll paint, we'll feed you, you drink a little wine and have a lot of fun.
And just really, really talented people with bags of information on how to do what we love. Come to colorinyourlife.com.au, of course, and come and see us. And if you want to be on the show, I mean, did you have a good time?
Absolutely. It's great.
Fantastic. Come in and see us, and we'll go from there. But till we meet again, guys, we've had a fantastic time in America again. We're going to head off somewhere in the world. But remember, till we catch up again, make sure you put some colour in your life. Bye now. See you guys.
Bye.
Bye now.
An dieser Stelle möchten wir uns ganz herzlich bei Graeme Stevenson bedanken. Er hat uns dieses Filmmaterial freundlicherweise zur Verfügung gestellt. Wir haben mit ihm verabredet, auch zukünftig einige seiner Produktionen hier in diesem Programm zu präsentieren. Wir werden viele international bekannte Künstler zu sehen bekommen. Wir freuen uns auf diese Zusammenarbeit. Dies bringt uns zum Ende unseres heutigen Programms. In den kommenden Monaten werden wir weitere Folgen mit Malerinnen und Malern aus aller Welt präsentieren. Halten Sie deshalb Ausschau nach ERA, der Association Embracing Realist Art, und besuchen Sie unsere englische Internetseite realist-art.com.